What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we are, of course, expecting a Nintendo Direct to happen in the next 2 weeks or so, basically before the end of the month, since Nintendo told us that a Direct was happening in June. But now it appears a certain trailer was posted up by accident and then pulled down, which now has people looking towards a certain date for this presentation. And yes, it's actually fairly ironic for the game that's involved. We're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Ubisoft Forward, everything that was announced and shown off there. We'll go over all of that. And Phil Spencer decided to do some interviews after the Xbox showcase, and of course, it got everyone online in a bit of an uproar. So if you guys enjoyed these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with Avowed, which was shown during that showcase, and while they did give us glimpses of gameplay and in-game visuals, they didn't necessarily tell us the whole story. They were saving that for a deep dive that they did, and you can see some of that here. I picked out a few bits and pieces when it came to the different details that they went into, which does include, yes, a third-person mode. I know that's a big thing where people see a game that's only first-person and they might be avoiding it then, motion sickness, or just not really liking that viewpoint. They will have a third person. I'm kind of envisioning what we have with something like Skyrim, for example, where it's kind of janky, but yeah, it works. So there you go. It is optional. I assume you'll be able to switch back and forth between first person and third person with a push of a button. They did spend quite a bit of time improving combat animations after that developer direct, since they got a lot of feedback around it not being as impactful, and they're feeling pretty good about a 2024 release, which is still strange that we don't have a release date yet, although I am looking at just the amount of games that Microsoft will be looking to push out this holiday season, and maybe they're still trying to figure out how they want to space that, especially with Call of Duty right there in the thick of things, that being a first-party game now, technically, from Microsoft. So we'll keep an eye out for maybe an Xbox Wire post that starts to lay down all the release dates going into the holiday season. Also, we do have Sonic Cross Shadow Generations coming up here later this year. But along with that, people are wondering, okay, what other plans do you have outside of maybe the next big Sonic Frontiers follow-up? Maybe with remasters of, I don't know, fan favorites? Well, we can see this posted up. This is an interview with IGN. And Takashi Lizuka, of course, head of Sonic team, saying, so when we remastered Sonic Colors, and it was Sonic Colors Ultimate, wanted to kind of think about what we could bring next as a remastered title. And at that time, Sonic Generations was kind of what everyone was really wanted and was really hungry for. So that's why we chose to do Sonic Generations, and we added in Shadow Generations portion. But depending on what people like out there, if there's a title people like, we'll think about it for the next remaster. I wonder what game from Sonic's past, 3D games specifically, people would want to have remastered. We'll never know. Maybe Sonic 06? Yeah, I guess that could be it. Or I don't know, Sonic Adventure, maybe 2. Technically you could do both of them, I guess, and do like a collection, maybe. But really, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, I'm sure, is the one that a lot of people are thinking back on, since that was an awesome 3D Sonic game, whether it was on the Dreamcast or on the GameCube. It is an absolute classic. And if you go back and play it now, it still has its moments, but it could definitely use some work to modernize it a bit, right? So that's what I would like to see them go back and do, but who knows? Having Sonic Cross Shadow for Generations was certainly one that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but I do like sort of the addition and the twist on the classic title like Generations. So I am curious what they could do with something like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Oh, and while we are waiting for the release date for Metal Slug Tactics, we did have some gameplay that was shown off here, which you can see in this trailer, and there's a demo. So this is available as part of Steam Next Fest, and that's happening from June 10th to the 17th, so pretty much all this week. You can go on Steam and download the demo for Metal Slug Tactics, and I mentioned to check this one out. Specifically, this is lining up as like a handheld game for me on the Steam Deck or ROG Ally or MSI Claw, whatever, right? This looks like one that I would like to play as a handheld game on Steam, so I think that's what I'm going to do, is download the demo on maybe like a Steam Deck OLED and try it out there, because from what I'm seeing with this gameplay trailer, it looks awesome from like a tactics standpoint, mixing in sort of the Metal Slug art style, the visuals, and the lore there. So that's something I'm going to try, but I'm really interested about this release date because they once again just doubled down on Q4 or fall. fall of 2024, and we're kind of running out of time for that as well. So who knows, maybe just a trailer drops like out of nowhere and okay, here's the release date, we're ready to roll. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a Nintendo Direct that Nintendo themselves have confirmed is happening this month. So, I mean, look around right now. If it's probably not happening this week unless there's a surprise announcement today. So it leaves us with, well, 2 weeks left. So it's pretty straightforward. You have a 50% chance of technically guessing which week coming up the Nintendo Direct will fall in. But if you want to look towards just a specific date, it obviously becomes less than 50-50. However, people are now pointing towards a certain date because, as funny as this sounds, Among Us may have accidentally outed the day for the Direct. Well, let's start here, though. This is posted up over on Go Nintendo, and people noticed this actually yesterday, where a trailer for Among Us is an update. It's set for June 18th, 2024. And at first, it seems pretty straightforward. There was a video that was posted here, and they say developer Sloth has announced that the next update for Among Us is scheduled for June 18th, 2024. And it includes 3 new roles. You can get a look at the new update in the fresh trailer above. So we have more information here, a new crewmate role, which is like Tracker, Noisemaker, Phantom, great. And then there's also an official Inner Sloth blog post with the update. Unfortunately, that's gone though, and that trailer is private now. So as people are looking at this, they start thinking, okay, well, why would they have privated that? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Next week, they'll have this update, unless they are in the Nintendo Direct, and this is an update that was going to go live after the Direct aired, and okay, yeah, cool, we're just going to shadow drop this into Among Us right away. And yes, that's very possible because it technically lines up if you consider the fact that, yes, there are 2 weeks coming up where there could be a Nintendo Direct, and we have had Among Us in previous Nintendo Direct presentations. It's clearly very popular on the Switch, so seems like a good spot for them to talk about an update that would then shadow drop after that presentation. And yes, I know it's funny that technically it's Among Us that could have outed the Nintendo Direct, a game about trying to figure out who's going around and taking everyone out, and you have to eject them out of the ship and everything. Now it looks like in this case it's Inner Sloth who may have just given away the date for the Direct, which seems pretty straightforward. Then it's a Tuesday. It's like right in the middle of June. Sure, technically it's a week later than what I think many people were expecting, which would have been this E3 sort of week, but the fact that E3 is gone now and everyone's kind of like doing their own thing, it's almost a free-for-all, which does feel very scattershot as it is. They can pretty much do it at any time in June that lines up with their own internal schedule. So we'll hang out and wait and see if maybe next week on Monday they announce the Direct for Tuesday, or maybe they want to do it a few days ahead of time and Thursday or Friday coming up, they make that announcement for the following week. But yes, that's probably why you're going to see people talk about a Direct potentially happening for June 18th because, well, an Among Us trailer got out there. And I guess the big twist would be they just post the trailer up normally June 18th with no Direct in sight, but I guess we'll find out here in the coming week. Next up, let's talk about the Ubisoft Forward that happened yesterday, and it was kind of a weird live stream since they posted, of course, there's a countdown. The whole thing ended up being about 2 hours, which is much longer than it needs, about twice as long as it needed to be, but like the quality for the stream wasn't great. So we'll show you some footage from it, but if you're looking at like, okay, why does this look super compressed 480p? It seemed to just be Ubisoft themselves that ran the live stream that way. Either way, we're going to go down line by line and talk about all the stuff that was shown at Ubisoft Forward. We'll start from the top here, though, with Star Wars Outlaws. Now, obviously, they're going to make a big push for this, considering it is out August 30th, so we're a little over 2 months away from it releasing, and they showed off some space combat, which kind of remind me a little bit of Starfield combat, somewhat, maybe a little bit more arcadey here. They do mention your reputation will change with different factions based on your actions, whether you're infiltrating a camp through stealth measures or aligning more so with others. You'll negatively affect or positively affect your reputation across the galaxy. You do have travel on planets. They show off the speeder, which you can upgrade. At least they mention that very, very briefly. And you have Nyx, who, while you are maybe sneaking into a camp, can distract enemies, and they'll also detect them, and they show through like walls and stuff, you can see the different enemies. And my biggest takeaway here is, yes, it is, as they mentioned, like the first big open world Star Wars game, but it looks a lot like Star Wars Uncharted. And I am still waiting for that reveal where somehow a lightsaber finds its way into the game. I mean, it's Star Wars, so you would expect lightsabers and force powers, but if they're able to produce a really fun open world adventure style game, maybe they don't necessarily need that. However, I think it would still be interesting to run into a powerful Jedi or Sith or something, and you have to more or less escape from them rather than try to battle them and just show how powerful that can be when you run across something like that. But I mean, I'm at least interested to see how it turns out. I think I'm going to hold out for reviews on this one before I jump into what'll be a very large Ubisoft world that will probably suck up a lot of time. From there, we had X Defiant with Season 1 that is coming July 2nd. New maps, weapons, there's a whole faction there that's being added. Skull and Bones Season 2 is out now. Season 3 is called Dragon's Wake. Prince of Persia, they had a whole section for this. The Lost Crown is getting a free update and story DLC that's coming in September. The Rogue Prince of Persia getting an update. It's free update for Temple of Fire. It's a new biome with enemies, weapons, and more. And then the big one, and this is a shame because they built this up like it was going to be a sizable reveal. And that would be Prince of Persia Sands of Time. This is the remake that was announced years ago, and if you remember, the backlash to what was shown was so overwhelming that they decided to move the game off of the original developing team, and they brought in some of their, I guess they're more seasoned veterans and teams to work on this game. It's now slated for 2026. They put that up with the year, and the crowd cheered for this. This was not a let's cheer for this moment because you're like, wow, this is like a 6-year announcement to release. So, okay, well, here's hoping it turns out to be a good game. I guess the one silver lining is Ubisoft is taking this seriously enough to reboot it, and it's probably going to cost a lot of money to get it all done. So at least they seem invested, we'll say, in Prince of Persia, the franchise, and trying to make a return for it. Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is a story pack 1, the Skybreaker, that's July 16th. The Crew Motorfest, they talked about Season 5, 6, and 7, outlined all of that for the game. We have Anno 17 Pax Romana is announced for 2025, PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series. They spent about 13 minutes or so going over Assassin's Creed Shadows. This is, of course, is out November 15th. They open with Yasuke, more of an action-based approach, fighting all kinds of enemies in like this open market area. And there were some destructible bits happening there where there's crates shattering into pieces or even like stands falling over. He had like a big club, like this big mace club he was hitting people with, broke out the sword. Very much reminded me at times of some of the combat from Ghost of Tsushima, which, I mean, it involves parrying. You have different stances they were shifting between. It was super violent. So I liked what I saw from that section. And then they moved over to now where you had more of the stealth gameplay, of course, tapping into like that shinobi style. And you had different gadgets and items to distract enemies and take out lights. So the taking to the shadows seems to be a big focus here. So she stabbed an enemy through like thin walls that were inside a large building. Kind of reminded me a bit of Tenshu at that point, because then they fell backwards and through the walls. That was kind of cool. But from what I saw here, I think it looks pretty good. I'm excited about Assassin's Creed Shadows and kind of that different gameplay between Yasuke and Naoe. But once again, I do then think about how large the world is that Ubisoft likes to craft with some of these games. I'm immediately thinking this is a 60 or 70 hour game just to play through it. There's 100+ hours to do everything, and that's quite the time sink in November when there's probably a lot of other stuff coming out. So I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I think I probably will pick it up and jump into it, but I will do that thinking about, okay, this might be a game that I start up, leave, come back to, because it'll just be more of a marathon of a playthrough. Next up, let's talk about Metal Gear Solid Delta, as we did get a look at this collector's edition, as well as the potential release date, although there are a lot of questions around this specific day. Let's start, though, with Wario64, who did have a screenshot here of GameStop when they made the tweet, and they are pointing to, apparently, November 17th for the release date of Metal Gear Solid Delta. The only issue here is, yes, November 17th is a Sunday. Some other people pointed out that that's also the same day that the original came out, was November 17th, which is interesting there, but typically you don't see retail release on Sundays anymore. They used to back in the day. Nintendo used to release stuff on Sunday all the time. And by the way, really, really annoying at retail if you were trying to stock that stuff, because you had to make sure you're ready to go on Friday. It was a whole thing with street dates and stuff. But either way, I don't know if I would look at that too much, because GameStop did change back to just like a placeholder date way out into the future, where currently it's listed as December 31st, 2025. We're still waiting for confirmation, by the way, that Metal Gear Solid Delta is coming out this year. Nonetheless, there is an entire special edition that we can take a look at here, which looks, again, it looks really, really cool. It has this terrarium diorama. We have Snake there with his little pack up on the tree. I would want to see how detailed and really the quality, I should say, of this diorama up close. And maybe they'll release a video giving us really nice high-def shots of this piece. But it seemed like a lot of people were ordering it right away anyway, so maybe just the Metal Gear fandom, it won't even matter that much there. There's a full Metal Game case, Snake's ID card lanyard, there's a Fox patch. Again, looks really cool, and it is fun to be talking about something like Snake Eater, getting this remake, getting a collector's edition. We're speculating on a release timing for a Metal Gear game, so it is fun to see all this stuff, but I do still have questions around the game itself, with how Konami is more or less managing the development of this game with the funding and stuff behind it. However, from what you see in the trailer so far, like, I do like what I'm seeing, and I'm invested there. But the collector's edition, it might be one of the situations where if you're unable to get it, might be one of those things that pops up on eBay for 2 to 3 times the amount. So we'll see going forward, hopefully with a release date that is in 2024, but I guess we'll see. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Phil Spencer, who did have some interviews after their showcase, which makes sense now considering they showed off a bunch of games that people were very excited for, so it is easier to give interviews now versus after shutting down Tango. But either way, he did talk about a few things when it comes to Microsoft, Xbox, and them putting games on other platforms, because if you remember during that Xbox Business Update podcast, he did mention just 4 titles were going. Now it does appear that things have changed a bit, and that's pretty obvious when you see something like Doom, the newest one, going to PlayStation 5, which we can see this is posted up. This is over on The Verge, and again, this was during an interview with IGN. Phil Spencer asked about those games going to other platforms, now with Doom and more, saying our commitment to our Xbox customers is you're going to get the opportunity to buy or subscribe to the game, and we're going to support the game on other screens. You're going to see more of our games on more platforms, and we just see that as a benefit to the franchises that we're building. And we see that from players, and the players love to be able to play. So this should seem very obvious. I mean, I had mentioned before, he's saying 4 games now. It's going to be more. More games are going to go to other platforms, and the big benefit he's saying here for current Xbox owners is they don't have to buy the games necessarily. You can subscribe to Game Pass, and that's the big benefit. But if you're not subscribed to Game Pass, there's really not much of a benefit then, because you're still buying the game on Xbox, but you could also just be buying it on PlayStation. I guess at this time, like, games going to other platforms are also delayed currently, but that might not be the case in the future, as we're seeing Doom, right, the Dark Ages, that's just going to PlayStation day one, right? And who knows, with the next Switch that might be within striking distance of the Xbox Series X and the PS5 4 ports, so it's a bit more manageable to get something like Doom there. I wouldn't be shocked if that logo would be there at some point too, right? So this is kind of the issue that people run into with Phil Spencer. He'll say something like 4 games during that podcast, and then a month or 2 later, he's like, oh yeah, it's just games in general, just a bunch of games, more games. Yeah, that's kind of what we figured. It's just odd that now it's changed so quickly, but we've talked about this internal struggle that appears to be happening at Microsoft, and, well, it's hard to refute things when you see Sea of Thieves take over on the PlayStation platform. Obviously, people like Satya Nadella and more within Microsoft who don't really get the idea of exclusivity to sell hardware is going to tell you to start moving more and more games over, because they are seeing revenue come in, and Microsoft is a software company at its core. So yeah, going forward, you're going to see more and more of these big-time titles go to other platforms, and I do wonder if someday we will see Master Chief next to that PlayStation logo. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which of these games from the Microsoft Xbox Showcase are you most excited for? Doom the Dark Ages, 47%. The game did look awesome, and it's coming up in 2025. So I actually think that might be first half of 2025 even. So I think that's not too far out, I feel like. And it did look really, really cool in that trailer. Perfect Dark, though, at number 2, Indiana Jones at 3, and then we have Avowed and South of Midnight. I do like how people really latched on to Perfect Dark. I think the showing was very good for that game because people were wondering if there was just a problem with it. Like, is it like in trouble? Well, no, it seems to be in actually fairly good shape now. So that's one I think we're still a ways off of. Like, I'm thinking that might be 2026. But Doom, potentially right around the corner, or at least within a year, that is a little more tangible for people, and based on the showing, makes sense that most people are excited for that at this time. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from TVPIVVA, saying, John calling the Gears of War Bayonetta was not on my bingo card. Sequel to Bayonetta 3 will be hopefully on the Switch successor. John, you know this. Yeah, Bayonetta 4 coming up. That was the whole point of that. Now, it's like you go through 60 or 70 games or something when you're trying to rifle through them, and then you get to that point. I just go to Bayonetta when I was talking about Bayonet. But it's really funny because I do think about how we're going to see most likely the origin of that play out in a game. There's like lore and other things around how they had to go to something other than just putting a blade on the end of their guns because they would break off, or they were having issue fighting the Lotus and drones and stuff. So when we first saw that chainsaw, though, on the end of the gun, they just carved through some of the different enemies. It was mind-blowing stuff. It's so visceral and violent, but it was awesome. Remember, this is like 2006 when we were seeing this play out, and at that time, you were a Gears, you were Halo, or you were Call of Duty around the Xbox brand. And I was always the Halo guy, but yeah, I gotta tell you, I saw Gears of War and like the co-op and chopping people with the chainsaw. It was something else. So it definitely drew me in there, and it was a lot of fun to play through that game with friends back in the day. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was the potential for Among Us? Maybe gave away the direct date. How do you feel about the idea of June 18th? Does that seem to line up? And then also, what about the Ubisoft Forward? What was your favorite game there? How do you feel about the overall presentation? And the way Phil Spencer has gone back and forth on this whole multi-platform support for Xbox first-party games. How do you feel about maybe the direction of Microsoft going forward with that in mind? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.